Today's crossover edition of Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Texas Tech is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code Locked On College at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Arizona State is looking to run it back as the Big 12 champions. Texas Tech is loading up to challenge them. Are we going to see a conference preview in the middle of the season?
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to a special crossover edition of Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Texas Tech. I'm your host for the Sun Devils, Richie Bradshaw, joined by the host for the Red Raiders, Chris Level. Very interesting offseason that we got coming up for these two teams, and 2025 will be very telling about our programs now and in the future. We take on each other once again for the second time in as many years. Are we getting a conference title preview? Well, that depends because our friends over at FanDuel have very different odds, which is what we're going to talk about before we round out with how do you replace some program legendary running backs. But Chris, we at Arizona State University opened up our Big 12 conference debut on the road in Lubbock. And for all intents and purposes, a loss is a loss. I thought that there was a lot that ASU needed to work on in that game. By the end of the season, they definitely looked like a much better team. But I think that there needs to be a larger discussion for Lubbock being one of the tougher places in the Big 12 to play. And we'll kind of start it there with, the attitude that those Red Raiders have right now.
Well, and Richie, I was in the lovely city of Tempe. I don't know. It's probably been 3 or 4 months ago. It's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I would say without a doubt my second favorite Big 12 city, other than where I live right now, is in Lubbock. But
of course.
yeah, and you know what's fascinating about this conversation we're having is that because you and I talked last summer or prior to last season, and we talked right before the Texas Tech game and all that. It is wild still, and I know that you probably have recorded or played that record over and over again. Pick 16th.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if that's not sports and just the beauty of why we pay attention and why you got to play them and all the stuff, I don't know what is, man. Fascinating that what Coach Dillingham and the Sun Devils did and all that stuff. And I look back on you mentioned the Sun Devils coming to Lubbock. That was a win that Texas Tech needed to get. They lost to Washington State in the non-conference, and I just had no feel for it at the time that this was going to be one of, if not their best win all year. I mean, just didn't know. It was so early. And they would go on to win in Ames as well, which also turned out to be a really big win. That's who Arizona State played in the conference title game. But it's just anyway. So I wanted to set that up by saying it's just wild. We will talk about predictions and all these things. Heck, man, maybe we're sitting here talking about ASU and the Red Raiders, and we'll get into the Utes and Kansas State and Iowa State or whoever else. Maybe it's somebody like Cincinnati or UCF sneaking around the chicken coop that we just we're not paying attention to that's going to swoop in here and win this thing like you guys did last year. But wild, absolutely wild.
Right, and that's the whole thing, and the beauty of college football is anything and everything can happen because we're going to go into the season, and it probably is going to be one of Cincinnati or UCF or maybe that team down south that's not doing so well that could be picked to finish dead last. But who knows? Maybe they got some special stuff going on behind the scenes and they come out and shock the world. Like just an example for UCF, Scott Frost is back. They won a national championship in quotation marks when he was down there before he went over to Nebraska. So that's the beauty of this conference. And it's something that so many people on the outside don't like about the Big 12 is it's so volatile and everyone beats up on each other. But that's why we love it so much. And that's why seeing Arizona State win last year was not only cool for Sun Devil fans, but it was just cool for college football to see a team make a debut to a conference that they're projected to finish last in and just shock the world. But then they're returning the vast majority of that team. So they're hoping to run it back to the championship. But I look over at Texas Tech and there's a lot of good stuff that's coming back to that team. And I don't think there was a bigger winner through the transfer portal this offseason than what the Red Raiders got going on down there.
Yeah, and I want to get to some of what Arizona State added in the portal, but that was because I kind of set it up a second ago. I think they got so close to basically just needed one more win somewhere in the conference schedule, and they would have been playing in Arlington against either Arizona State or Iowa State, and beat both of them. They're just right there, but you couldn't. You had TCU dead to rights on the road, couldn't get that done. Baylor came into Lubbock and won a game. And it just, Colorado came into Lubbock and it was a wild atmosphere. Just couldn't get that done either. But, you win any one of those three games and you would have been playing in Arlington to get somebody. So they did. They were very motivated. We're just right there. They had money to spend. They had motivated money. They had donors that wanted to try to take advantage of the rules at the time. And I think they kind of got going with it and felt like, okay, let's. So I think they had a hard time telling guys no. Like they kept getting guys on visits and going, so we really just gonna not add this guy? He wants to come here and we can make it happen. And so they just kept going and going. And so much of it was trenches and the big guys. And they basically moved secondary. So it's been impressive. And they went about it as in, because I want to ask you about your running back here in a second, because I think it's one of the most underrated transfer portal additions in the entire conference. But much like Kanye Udo, I think they went and got experienced transfer portal additions. This wasn't, hey, man, he was recruited as a 4-star, but he's just frustrated because he's not playing over there, but he hadn't done anything yet. No, they didn't take any of those types. These are all guys that are 1 or 2 or 3 year guys that have already played, already have on tape, have production, and that's what that was their MO when attacking the portal. So we'll see kind of if it works out, and it's a lot of new pieces to try to get meshed together quickly, but that's what they're going to try to do.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that was able to help turn around ASU so quickly is in the first 2 years, look, Colorado attacked the transfer portal as aggressively as we've ever seen since the portal became a thing.
Yeah,
right. That's how they got him there, and it worked. They won 9 games last year, but ASU was also very portal heavy. In their first 2 years under Dilly, same amount of time as Dion, they added over 40 kids through the transfer portal. And some of their key additions, like Sam Leavitt, Jordan Tyson, Cam Skattebo, what a coincidence. They all kind of come together to help ASU get moving. So that is something that ASU is really valued, is finding guys that they're able to build the core of their team around. And, Skattebo wasn't recruited out of high school. He had one offer from Sacramento State. Sam Leavitt, 4-star recruited to Michigan State. He transfers after 1 year, feels like he's completely forgotten about. There was a lot of guys that they looked for in the portal that, sure, could they have gone after Dante Moore, the former 5-star quarterback, after he had played 1 year at UCLA? Yeah, they definitely could have. And I think they would have had a good shot because Kenny Dillingham recruited him out of high school and had him committed to Oregon out of high school. And then he decommitted when Kenny left. So there is a lot of directions that ASU can go when it comes to the transfer portal. But it really does feel like they're much more invested, and ASU fans hear this all the time, in building a culture down here rather than getting the biggest names. There's a lot of 3-star kids that are on this team that play better than 3 stars. That was one of the things that Texas fans were trolling ASU about when we get ready for the Peach Bowl. They only have 3 stars. They don't have NFL kids. And then we get there and we shut down their run game. They had run for over 200 yards against Clemson. They had less than 50 yards as a team against ASU. Turns out you get kids who just play good football and good things are going to happen. So you look at everything that Texas Tech was able to add to an already good football team, and then you look at what ASU was able to retain, and then the reinforcements they were able to bring in. And Chris, I gotta ask you, I know it's going to be mid-October when these two teams meet in Tempe, Arizona, but this will be the fourth game of Big 12 conference play for these two teams. A great opportunity for a measuring stick game to see where you're at. I don't mean to overreact, but I feel like there's potential that this could be a Big 12 conference championship preview. I really, really do.
Yeah, if you were to ask me Tech's most important game, or I don't know, key game, however you want to phrase it, that's the one I'd point to. And I think that the close second would be the one in Manhattan, Kansas, that they've got to go to. And I'm starting to realize, which we'll get to that in a second, but I'm starting to realize maybe the one in Salt Lake City may be a bit trickier than I would have thought, say, 2 or 3 months ago. At least a lot of people are starting to buy into Utah, and I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with that, but we'll get into that. But again, tricky game. But I just think the one in Tempe is, I think that's the one. And I'm not saying that whoever wins this game, has a spot in Arlington all locked up. But no, I think it goes a long way in doing that. And I think these are two of the contenders, bottom line. And I think that you do yourself a lot of good by whoever wins that game on October the 18th in Tempe. And I have been asked multiple times in various shows or media interviews or whatever, like to this conversation we're having. Who do you think should be the favorite? Because I think people are trying to, or think that I'm going to say, well, Texas Tech should be, and I don't think they should be. I'm a bit uncomfortable with them as a favorite because I don't think they've earned that right. I think they are in the conversation, but my answer has been Arizona State because I think they've earned that right. And I think with bringing your quarterback back, you've got your head coach back, obviously. I think there's a big question about Skattebo, which we can get into. I think they tried to ably replace him. Then there's the Jordan Tyson component. Anyway, I don't know how you could look at it and pick like a Kansas State or an Iowa State, unless you're just trying to overthink it and say, nobody's going to repeat. It's taken a long time for anybody in this league to repeat, and I get that. But if Arizona State, tell me why I would be wrong. You tell me why I would be wrong in saying Arizona State should be the favorite. Like what would be the potential pitfalls for the Sun Devils? Like what worries you? What keeps you up at night? What are you concerned about with this football team several months before the season gets going?
Right. And I mean, with everything that's returning for ASU, I don't really know how many questions I have. And there's definitely times where, I feel like I can be pretty objective about this team. At least I do my best to. But when I look at who's going to repeat, or who's going to win, I struggle to see how anyone can usurp ASU to repeat. But I will tell you what, Chris, that game you mentioned, circle as one of the most important for Texas Tech, ASU is circling that too. Not just because they lost last year, but because it's a home game. ASU went undefeated at home last year, and that is one of the heavyweight favorites to win the Big 12. I can tell you, Locked On Big 12 host Drake Toll, if we asked him to name his 5 biggest games for next season, that's got to be near the top. And if it's not, then maybe he does not know ball. That's all I'm saying. But we are 2 of the conference favorites. Apparently, not the current favorites. That's coming up next on this crossover edition of Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Texas Tech. Ever wish that managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's complete financial command center. Take control of all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. How many times have I had to say this? Using those delivery apps, it's very convenient, but my goodness, was I spending a lot of money. And Monarch was able to help me figure that out so that I could take that down a little bit and start putting money aside for myself, trying to save up for things. If you are looking to do the same, then you should take a look at it. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Thanks again for joining this crossover edition of Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Texas Tech. Shout out to the everydayers who are here every day. Thanks for tuning in and making these shows your first and second listens of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Chris Level, Richie Bradshaw, Arizona State, Texas Tech should be near the top of the favorites to win the conference. And don't worry, they are. Our friends over at FanDuel have shuffled this order around pretty much since the season ended. Who's going to be the favorite? Well, Kansas State's always up there. Arizona State's got a chance to repeat. Texas Tech is always good, and then they dominate the transfer portal, and their odds shoot through the roof. A lot of people are high on Baylor. I myself am high on Baylor. Sorry to the Red Raider fans. I do not mean that to come across wrong. I like Baylor this year. I like TCU to make a comeback. Look at me. I'm stirring the pot really bad right now. But this is a wide open conference with a lot of teams that could contend, which is why it's interesting that these odds are fluctuating so much. And it's even more interesting to me that Arizona State is no longer the favorites. Texas Tech is not the favorites. They are actually tied with our friends over at FanDuel for plus 650 on their odds to win the conference. The two teams ahead of them, Kansas State, you understand that. They're contending every year. And yeah, I'm reading that right. It says Utah. It says Utah, Chris. It says Utah.
For the second year in a row. I understand Kansas State. I really do. I understand. Like Chris Kleiman he deserves some street cred. They've been really good. They're not going to suck. Okay, their quarterback is back. They've got some weapons returning. That's a good culture program and all of it. The Utah one is weird. Okay, they may have the best offensive line in the Big 12 conference. I think Arizona State's got a really good one. Texas Tech vastly improved theirs in the portal, but I think Utah has probably got hands down the best offensive line in the. They're going to now have one of the top tackles in the country, so they'll be good. I don't know. My question about Utah would be they lost some pieces on defense, although they'll be good. They'll just be solid. Kyle Whittingham deserves a lot of respect and street cred and all that stuff. Devin Dampier, that would be their high-profile portal addition. This is a player that I think completed below 60% of his passes. He quarterbacked a team at the Group of 5 level that went 5-7. He's got a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and I know he ran for a bunch of yards. I just wonder if Utah will be able to score enough points regularly to be able to win the league. I guess is my point. I just don't know if their defense is good enough to win games 17-13 every Saturday. So, but the Red Raiders will have to deal with the Utes about a month. Almost a month to the day before they show up in Tempe and. So that one I don't get. And you mentioned the Baylor one that they're not. I think Arizona State ends up in Waco. Don't they play in Waco before
first game of Big 12 play?
And I think that's a sneaky good game.
It is. I'm nervous about that game.
Yeah, and I think Baylor is an interesting program in that. What are they? Because they've been like up and down and like it's like which one is it? It's
Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah. Because last year to start the season out they were Hyde and then they turned into Jekyll and they got right in Lubbock and they really never turned back and they lost their bowl game. They had some guys sitting out, all that stuff. They lost to LSU in the bowl game, but and I don't know if I'm comfortable with Sawyer Robertson as the first team All Big 12 quarterback over a guy like Sam Leavitt.
I'm not.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, probably not. But in not playing a full season, he put up some really good numbers, and he won. He's an intangibles guy, kind of like Leavitt is. I don't think he's got quite the measurables that Leavitt does, but that's what's wild about this league is that there's so many returning quarterbacks. I mean, like Tech's guy and Behren Morton, I think he had 27 touchdown passes to 8 interceptions.
He's pretty good.
And his offensive line was bad, especially on the left side. They were, I think, ranked like 125th or 123rd in pass defense and just total defense. It was just bad. And yet they won 8 games. And there's a lot of people that just don't give him really any credit. And he ended up having surgery after the season was over, so he wasn't clearly 100% all throughout the year, but he never missed. But it's Rocco Becht, it's Avery Johnson, it's Josh Hoover, it's Sam Leavitt, it's Sawyer Robertson, and it's Devin Dampier, and I get all that. But I think Behren Morton will be a big reason why Texas Tech has a chance to contend for this thing. But you just don't hear his name a lot. Tell me about Leavitt a little bit before we get to these running backs. I mean, he surprised you last year with how good he was and poised and just kind of, I don't know. He just seemed to make winning plays routinely.
He did. And the thing with Leavitt is from week 1 to the Peach Bowl, you talk about guys get better as the season goes on. He was unrecognizable. He was such a completely, vastly different quarterback. Going into the year, he's a redshirt freshman. He has 4 games under his belt. He beats out Jaden Rashada in camp in spring, and you're like, oh, okay, maybe there's something going on here. And he comes out the gate, and you see the talent and everything there. But one of the things that I had repetitively said on Locked On Sun Devils during the season was we can't expect the deep ball to be there right out the gate for Sam Leavitt. What I want to see is you test the limits, test the boundaries, see how it looks. If it's not there, then don't force it for the rest of the year. Just take what the defense gives you. And through 4 games, including the Texas Tech game, it did not look like that was going to be one of the strengths of the offense. So you're kind of like, well, it's not the end of the world, but there's a direction that we need to pivot right now. And the deep ball is just not going to be involved. Well, he ends up really figuring it out. And by the end of the year, the connection between him and Jordan Tyson just becomes so electric across the country, not just in the Big 12. From week 8 until the end of the regular season, Jordan Tyson led the nation in receiving yards. It was phenomenal, and so much of it was because of what him and Sam Leavitt were able to do. They have a shared brain and the telepathy to be able to just know where each other are at all times in the field and connect. Like they've got that sixth sense for each other. But
it is. I'll just tell you a funny story. I'm fortunate enough to do the basketball radio analysis work for Texas Tech, and
humble brag.
No, but like 2-ish years ago, I'm trying to remember exactly time frame. Anyway, Jalen Tyson, his older brother, was playing at Texas Tech basketball, and it was during the holidays. And I think Jordan he was at Colorado at the time, and he'd heard that's how he exited Colorado. It was before Dion got there, but I think he tore his ACL. There was a knee injury. Anyway, yes. He's hopping around the arena on crutches. He was at a shoot around, and I'm like, "Who's that?" And they're like, "Oh, that's Jordan Tyson. He's a pretty good receiver." And I'm like, "Okay." And I just never in my wildest dreams did I think that fast forward, and that's who he would turn into, a likely first or second round pick, and one of the. I don't know. It's just kind of worlds colliding right there, and knowing his brother ended up transferring out and playing at Cal to finish up his college career before he was a first round pick by the Cavaliers. But anyway, pretty athletic family. So wild full circle moment right there. And it's interesting because you mentioned about Jordan and how he led the country or the Big 12 in receiving yards.
The country. The whole nation.
The second leading receiver returning in the Big 12 Conference plays at Texas Tech, and I don't think hardly anybody knows that. Caleb Douglas. He was their number 2 last year, but he had I think nearly 900 yards receiving and about 8 touchdowns. Pretty good numbers. And so that's also, I think, a reason why you could look at these two teams, that they've got a key target back, the quarterback returns, all those things. Let's get to these running backs. Everybody says I think about both programs. If you're going to list reasons why, I don't know, that worries me, that concerns me. It all revolved around Cam Skattebo, and I don't disagree that it didn't. Tajh Brooks was everything for that team. He bailed them out repeatedly. I don't disagree with any of that. How do these two teams replace what these guys brought to the table? Because these are two of the best that really ever played at either institution last year at the running back position.
You are talking about two of the best running backs that these programs have ever seen. I don't know how you replace them, but we'll take a further dive into it in just a second. This is a Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Texas Tech crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks again for making Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Texas Tech your first listen of the day. Shout out to our everydayers who are here every day listening to the Locked On Podcast Network, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I already said Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Look, I'm not going to lie. I'm thinking about running backs right now. Chris put it in my head. I'm going to watch Cam Skattebo highlights when we're done with this. I don't know how you replace a guy like that if you're Arizona State. And I look at Texas Tech, and I do have a similar question. How do you replace a guy like that who was so dynamic, productive, and just flat out a good football player for Tech throughout his career in Lubbock? And both of them are in the pros now. And we're obviously very excited to see not just our favorite guys, but again, guys that were so good in college that you got a sneaky feeling that they're going to end up doing something in the pros and people are going to be like, whoa, who is this guy? Where'd they come from? And that's when me and Chris hop in and we're like, well, he comes from Texas Tech, he comes from Arizona State, and get to brag about it. But now we're left with the question of how do you replace them? And I think we have a common answer here, Chris, and that's running back by committee.
Yeah, I mean, the easy answer here is to that question, how do you replace them, is you don't.
Right.
You don't.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, that's right. We'll talk to you next time. Don't forget to tip your waiter and waitress on the way out. I think these two individuals, Brooks and Skattebo last year were these teams' identity on offense. I think so much revolved around both of them. They were both such good at clutch, pass pro, consistency. I mean, all the things. And they probably weren't. Neither one of them weren't drafted higher than they were just because they lacked top end speed. Okay, certainly understand that. And I think it would be a mistake for Coach McGuire and Coach Dillingham to try to replace them. You don't really. So this is probably going to look a little bit different, for the Sun Devil offense and for the Red Raider offense. You've got your coordinator back. Coach Arroyo, I think, is back. You've got your quarterback back. You got a good offensive line. They added, a tight end in the portal, a stud receiver in the portal, several offensive line in the portal. They also added Quentin Joyner, a running back from USC, originally from Houston, averaged over 7 yards a carry. And, he went to Ohio State and said, no, thanks, I'm going to Lubbock, which I was like, okay. Ohio State seemingly knows what they're doing with the tailback position. And then you guys went to Army. If there was ever like a perfect
of all places.
Fit, yeah, but I mean, it's perfect. I mean, it's like if you were going to find Cam Skattebo's replacement, it's like, of course you're going to go to Army. I mean, hard-nosed, tough, runs between the tackles and all the things. So, I mean, tell me about Kanye Udo. It's his job, or you're saying he'll be one of the folks that will carry the load?
I'm very intrigued by how this backfield is going to distribute carries for Arizona State because Kanye Udo does come in as the most productive back that is currently on the roster for this program. He ran for over 1,100 yards, double-digit touchdowns last year with Army, and that's with a quarterback who carried the ball 300 times. Like, Kanye finishes second on the team with 1,100 yards. That's the kind of offense that they run. But he's going to come to Arizona State, and it's another run-friendly offense. But there's so many intriguing guys. One of the guys is Kyson Brown. I'm very high on him. He got an opportunity to start last year against UCF because Skattebo took a hard shot to the ribs the week prior against Oklahoma State. They sat him for a game. Kyson comes out, and auditions himself to be the starting running back. And it's not this game that'll blow you away, but he looked pretty darn solid. And then ASU has some other intriguing guys on the roster. They've got redshirt freshman Jason Brown Jr., who was a 4-star in last year's class. You have Raleek Brown, who missed a lot of last year due to a persistent hamstring injury, but he is 100%. I saw him in spring ball. He looks really good, and he's gotten work with first team. There's a lot of intrigue in this backfield right now, but I know one of the most important factors for the offense entirely is being able to pass the football out of the backfield and have a reliable pass catcher back there. Udo has a whopping 2 catches for 0 yards in his career, 1 for 1 yard, 1 for -1 yard. So we're going to find out, how he looks as a pass catcher coming out here. I did speak with him on Locked On Sun Devils, so humble brag for myself. If you want to check out that, you can see a player interview and get to know the young man. But he's excited for an opportunity to catch the football, and he's going to be force-fed it more than likely because Cam Skattebo was your second leading receiver last year in receptions, yards, and touchdowns.
He had I want to say like a 60-plus yard screen pass reception in Lubbock, Texas. He didn't get his normal rushing yardage total, but he hit him big with the.
He said, "I'll do it somewhere else."
Pass out of that's right, and ran right down the sideline there. Man, I think it's been also interesting too that I think Joey and Kenny Dillingham have gotten to be buddies. I think they talk fairly regularly, and that I think that's good. I think I think there's a lot of mutual respect there. I think they actually talk about conference happenings and what should we do or how are you doing this. I think they share info, and I think there's a lot of mutual respect between these two head coaches. And when I host Joey's coaches show during the season, he would often say that. So this is even a year ago, and I think that is continued through the offseason. So anyway, can't wait for mid-October. Again, Tempe's awesome. I would tell any Tech fan out there, if you're looking for a road game to go to that one. Get you around the golf in. The beverages are cold. The scenery is unbelievable, and you will enjoy. So, yeah, man.
It's going to be a good time, and I truly, truly do think that there is a massive opportunity for this to be a preview of the Big 12 Conference title game. I also just think that these are two of the best teams in the Big 12 and two teams that are going to shock the college football world this year. The Big 12 is being overlooked right now. That's okay because we got a lot of teams that are going to contend. ASU and Texas Tech are going to be one of them. Chris Level, Locked On Texas Tech. Richie Bradshaw, Locked On Sun Devils. Appreciate you guys as always for tuning in to make our shows your first listen of the day. Shout out to our everydayers who are here every day. For Locked On Sun Devils, if you're looking for a second listen, then go check on Locked On Texas Tech. Locked On Texas Tech. If you're bored and want to give me a listen, then come on over to Locked On Sun Devils. We are always here to talk ball, have a good time. We will check you guys out later. And until next time, you keep it locked right here with Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Texas Tech.